At dinner with my family, my fiancée whispered, "Your mom's accent is so embarrassing. How do you even handle it?" I didn't react. I just finished my meal, thanked my mom, and went to sleep. The next morning, she walked into the kitchen and found her engagement ring sitting on my mom's table, right where the insult happened. My mom has been in this country for 40 years, but she still has her accent. It's thick, a little musical, and it's the sound of my entire childhood. It's the sound of her telling me stories, of her teaching me how to cook, of her cheering me on at soccer games. To me, it's the sound of home. To my fiancé, it was apparently a source of deep personal embarrassment. The end came, as these things often do, over a meal. It was Sunday dinner at my parents' house, a tradition we'd held for as long as I can remember. My fiancée, Brooke, had been going for the 2 years we were together. My parents loved her, or at least I thought they did. They welcomed her into our family without a second thought. My mom especially treated her like the daughter she never had. That night, my mom was telling a long funny story about her first job in America, how she'd misunderstood an order and accidentally sold a customer a broom instead of a loaf of bread. Her accent gets stronger when she's excited, and she was in full storytelling mode. We were all laughing, or I thought we were. I glanced over at Brooke. She wasn't laughing. She was staring down at her plate, a tight, pained smile plastered on her face. Later, while my dad was clearing the table and my mom was getting dessert, Brooke leaned over to me. We were sitting at the old oak table my grandfather had built, the same table I'd eaten at my whole life. She whispered it, and she sounded like a total snob. "Your mom's accent is so embarrassing. How do you even handle it?" I didn't react. I didn't say a word. I just felt this deep, profound stillness settle over me. It was like a bell had been struck in a quiet room, and the vibration of it just hung in the air without revealing the absolute emptiness of everything I thought we had. I had heard little things before, a quiet sigh when my mom would call, a slight eye roll when my dad would tell one of his old country jokes. I had dismissed them as Brooke just being tired or stressed from her job at a high-end art gallery. I was wrong. It wasn't stress. It was shame. She was ashamed of my family, of me. My mom came back with a cheesecake she had made from scratch, Brooke's favorite. Brooke took a slice and told my mom how delicious it was, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I watched the performance, feeling like I was seeing her for the first time. The meal finished. I stood up, went over to my mom, and gave her a hug. I thanked her for dinner, told her I loved her, and said I was feeling tired and was going to head home. Brooke followed me out, waving goodbye to my parents like nothing had happened. The drive back to our apartment was silent. I could feel her looking at me, probably expecting an argument or an apology. I gave her neither. When we got home, I just said I was tired and went to bed. I didn't kiss her goodnight. I lay there in the dark, my back to her, and made a decision. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. I got dressed quietly, went into the living room, and took the engagement ring from the little dish on the mantelpiece where Brooke kept it when she slept. It was a beautiful ring, a vintage piece I had spent months searching for. I drove across town to my parents' house. I used my old key to let myself in. The house was dark and quiet. I walked into the dining room and placed the ring on the oak table, right on the spot where she had leaned over and insulted my mother. Then I went back to the apartment to wait. Brooke walked into the kitchen around 8, looking refreshed. "Good morning," she said as if it were any other day. "Are you still in a mood?" "I'm not in a mood," I said. "I just dropped your ring off at my mom's house." She stared at me, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. "What are you talking about? Why would you do that?" "I left it on the dining room table," I said. "Right where you insulted my mother and everything she is. You can go pick it up on your way out." "We're done, Brooke." The confusion on her face slowly morphed into outrage. "You're breaking up with me over a whisper." "I was just being honest." "It is embarrassing." "No," I said, and my voice was calm, but it was a calm that had jagged edges. "You were being a snob. You sat in her home, ate the food she cooked for you, and you mocked the voice that taught me my first words. That's not honesty. That's cruelty. And I'm not going to build a life with someone who is cruel to the people I love. So, yes, we're done." She didn't cry. She got angry. She called me a mama's boy, said I was overreacting, that I was throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me. I just stood there and let her yell. When she finally ran out of insults, she just said, Fine, I'll be out by the end of the week. I thought that would be the end of it. I was naive. The first escalation was financial. We had a wedding planned for 6 months from then, and we had put down some serious deposits, mostly for my savings. The biggest one was for the venue, a trendy upscale event space that Brooke had insisted on. The deposit was $20,000, and it was non-refundable. A few days after she moved out, I called the venue to cancel. I explained the situation and asked if there was any possibility of a partial refund. The events manager, a woman with a slick corporate voice, was not helpful. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, "but the contract is ironclad. The deposit is non-refundable for any reason." Something about her tone felt off. I did a little digging. It turned out the venue was owned by a holding company. After a few hours of searching through public records, I found out who was on the board of that company. Brooke's uncle, a wealthy property developer named Richard, was a majority shareholder. She hadn't just picked a venue she liked. She had picked a venue that would funnel our money directly into her family's pockets. And they had no intention of giving it back. The next call was to Brooke. She answered on the first ring. I just called the venue. I said they won't refund the deposit. "I know," she said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. "Contracts are a pain, aren't they?" "You knew," I said. "You knew they wouldn't refund it because it's your uncle's company. You should have thought about that before you decided to throw our future away over nothing," she said, and hung up. So that was the game. She wasn't just going to leave. She was going to make sure it cost me. The next front in this little war was our friends. Brooke started a smear campaign that was both vicious and effective. She told everyone that I had a weird, unhealthy attachment to my mother, that my mom was a meddling, controlling woman who had never liked her, and that I had broken off the engagement in a fit of rage because Brooke had dared to stand up for herself. A lot of our mutual friends, people I had known for years, bought it. I was a quiet guy, and Brooke was a social butterfly. She was more believable. I started getting texts from people telling me I needed to apologize, that I was in the wrong. My best friend Dave was one of the few who called to get my side of the story. "She's telling everyone you're a mama's boy who freaked out on her." He said, I told him what she had actually said, what the insult was. Dave was quiet for a long moment. Then he just said, "Wow, that's low. My grandparents have accents. That's messed up." But most people didn't have that perspective. They just saw the narrative she was painting. The poor victimized woman and her unhinged mommy-obsessed ex-fiancé. The final straw, the thing that made me realize I had to fight back, was when she involved her parents. Her father, Robert, a condescending corporate lawyer, called me at my office. He didn't yell. He was worse. He spoke to me like I was a child. He was disappointed in Son. He said, "Brooke is devastated, and frankly, my wife and I are deeply concerned. This impulsive behavior, this hostility, it's not the man we thought our daughter was going to marry. We've invested a lot in this wedding emotionally and financially. We expect you to make this right." "Make it right, Howell?" I asked. "Apologize to Brooke. Go to counseling and we can get this wedding back on track," he said. "And we expect you to cover our expenses for the dress and the invitations we had already ordered." I just laughed. "You expect me to pay for a wedding dress for a woman who mocked my mother in her own home and who is now trying to steal the $20,000 deposit from me through her uncle's company?" He went cold. "I suggest you reconsider your position. You don't want to make an enemy of my family." He hung up. That was a threat. And I was done being the quiet, reasonable guy. I spent the next week planning. I knew I couldn't beat them in a game of he said, she said. I needed proof. I needed leverage. And I knew exactly where to find it. Brooke had a younger sister, Chloe. Chloe was the black sheep of the family. She was an artist, a free spirit, and she had never bought into her family's snobbish, materialistic world. We had always gotten along. I knew she had seen the toxic side of Brooke her whole life. I decided to take a long shot. I met Chloe for coffee. I laid out the whole story. The insult, the ring, the venue deposit, the smear campaign, the threat from her father. She just listened, shaking her head. "I'm not surprised," she said when I was done. "Brooke has always been like this. She's a user. My parents taught her how to be one. They see people as assets. You were a good, stable asset until you weren't." Then she told me something that changed the entire game. The art gallery Brooke worked at, the one she was so proud of, was in serious financial trouble. The owner was an old family friend and he was secretly looking for a buyer. And Brooke's plan, the one she had confided in, Chloe, was to use the money from our wedding, the generous gifts from our guests, and the startup fund she expected my parents to give us to buy a stake in the gallery and become a partner. Her entire future was dependent on our wedding going forward. And the $20,000 deposit she was trying to keep from me wasn't just spite. It was seed money for her new life. A life that didn't include me, just my money. She's telling everyone at the gallery that you two are still on track. Chloe said she's already negotiating her partnership deal, acting like the money is a sure thing. I had my leverage. The next day, I had my lawyer draft a letter. It was addressed to the owner of the art gallery. The letter was simple. It stated that I, as the primary financier of the wedding, had canceled the event. It stated that there would be no wedding gifts and no startup fund from my family. It stated that any business agreements made with Brooke on the assumption of these future funds were based on fraudulent misrepresentation. My lawyer also included a little note mentioning that I was aware of the gallery's financial difficulties and that I was personally considering new investment opportunities in the local art scene. I didn't send the letter. Not yet. First, I called Brooke. "We need to talk," I said, "about the $20,000. She was smug. "There's nothing to talk about. It's non-refundable." "Here's my offer," I said. "You tell your uncle to refund my deposit in full by the end of the week. In exchange, I won't send the letter I prepared for your boss at the art gallery, explaining that the wedding is off and that the money you've promised him doesn't exist." The silence on the other end of the line was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "You insulted my mother in her own home," I said. "You tried to steal $20,000 from me. Your dad threatened me. Your friends slandered me. You have fundamentally misunderstood the kind of man I am. Try me." I hung up. 2 days later, the full $20,000 was wired back into my account. The story could have ended there, but it didn't. Her father, Robert, was not a man who liked to lose. A week later, I got served with a lawsuit. It was a frivolous, ridiculous suit for infliction of emotional distress and breach of promise to marry. He was trying to bully me into a settlement. He was trying to drown me in legal fees. My lawyer, a guy who had been through a nasty divorce himself, just grinned when he read the papers. "This is a gift," he said. "They've just opened the door for us to counter-sue, and we're not just going for legal fees, we're going for damages." The next 6 months were a slow, grinding legal battle. Robert's strategy was to delay, to file endless motions to try and wear me down. It was expensive and it was stressful, but I refused to back down. And during this time, something unexpected happened. Chloe, who had been effectively disowned by her family for talking to me, became a real friend. We would meet for coffee once a week just to check in. She gave me updates on the family's meltdown, and I would tell her about the latest legal nonsense. She was my lifeline to sanity. My lawyer decided it was time to play hardball. We filed a motion to depose Brooke's uncle, Richard, the owner of the venue. We wanted to ask him under oath about the company's refund policies and whether he had a personal financial interest in keeping my deposit. The day before the deposition, my lawyer got a call. It was from Robert. He wanted to talk about a settlement. We met in a sterile conference room at a neutral law office. It was me, my lawyer, Brooke, and her father. Brooke wouldn't look at me. Her father did all the talking. He offered to drop the lawsuit if I signed a non-disclosure agreement and agreed to walk away. My lawyer just laughed. "Here's our offer," he said. "You will drop your frivolous lawsuit. You will pay for all of my client's legal fees, which currently stand at just over $30,000. And your daughter will write a formal handwritten letter of apology to my client's mother for the disrespectful and hurtful comments she made." Robert's face went purple. "That's outrageous." "Is it?" my lawyer asked. "Because our next step is to depose your brother-in-law about his business practices. Then we will depose every single one of Brooke's mutual friends who participated in the slander campaign. We will ask them under oath what Brooke told them and when. We will make this the most expensive, embarrassing, and public breakup in this city's history. Or you can pay the fees. She can write a one-page letter and we can all go home." Robert looked at Brooke. She just stared at the table. He knew he was beat. A week later, a check for my legal fees arrived at my lawyer's office, and a single crisp envelope arrived at my parents' house. It was the apology letter. My mom read it, then she just put it in a drawer. "It's over," she said. "We don't need to think about it anymore." But there was one final piece of fallout. Chloe called me and she was in tears. Her parents had cut her off completely. They had taken her off the family phone plan, canceled her car insurance, and told her that as long as she was friends with me, she was no longer their daughter. "I don't know what to do," she cried. "I have nowhere to go." "Yes, you do," I said. I had an empty spare room in my apartment. I told her she could stay with me, rentrée, until she got back on her feet. It was the least I could do. She had risked everything for me for the truth. The last I heard, Brooke lost her job. The gallery was sold to a new owner who wanted his own team. Her partnership deal, built on a foundation of my money, evaporated. She had to move out of her expensive apartment and back in with her parents. I saw her once a few months ago at a farmer's market. She was with her mom and they were arguing. She looked stressed, unhappy. She saw me and her eyes widened for a second. I was with someone new, a woman I had met volunteering at a local charity. A woman who had met my parents and had spent the entire dinner laughing at my dad's jokes and telling my mom that her accent was beautiful. Brooke just stared. She saw the life she could have had, the life she had thrown away because of her own ugly prejudice. I didn't smile. I didn't smirk. I just looked away and kept walking. My mom's accent is the sound of my heritage. It's the sound of resilience, of love, of a life built from scratch in a new country. It's not embarrassing. It's a badge of honor, and I will never again be with someone who is too small to see.